There are moments in life when the weight of the world feels like it is pressing down on your chest. You look at the circumstances standing in front of you and they appear bigger than you, stronger than you, and unmovable. Maybe it's a financial burden that seems impossible to overcome. Maybe it's a broken relationship that looks beyond repair. Maybe it's a sickness in your body or a heaviness in your mind that won't let go. In those moments, fear whispers, "You can't do it. This is the end." But I came to remind you today that there is a force greater than fear, greater than doubt, greater than any mountain standing in your way. That force is faith. Faith is not blind hope. It is the unshakable confidence that what God has spoken will come to pass. Faith doesn't deny the mountain, but it refuses to let the mountain have the final say. My friend, you were not created to be crushed under the weight of impossibility. You were created to rise, to speak, and to move forward with a faith that declares, "Nothing is too hard for my God." Faith was never meant to be passive. It was designed to be a voice that confronts obstacles head-on. Life is filled with mountains, mountains of debt, mountains of sickness, mountains of rejection, mountains of fear, and mountains of impossibility. But the secret of mountain-moving faith lies in opening your mouth with conviction and declaring the word of God into your situation. Too often, people remain silent in the face of trials, thinking that being quiet will make the storm pass, but silence gives power to the mountain. Faith, on the other hand, refuses to sit back and accept defeat. It steps forward and says with boldness, "This mountain must move." Your words are not ordinary when spoken in faith. They are weapons. They are declarations of truth. They are carriers of divine authority. The mountain may look immovable, but your faithful words shake its foundation. You must remember, it's not about your strength, but about the one who backs your words. When faith speaks, heaven responds, and earth must obey. This is the power of believing and declaring. The truth about faith is that it cannot remain hidden in the heart. It must be released through your tongue. Faith that is never spoken is faith that is never activated. You may believe in your heart that God can heal, restore, or provide, but until you open your mouth and declare it with conviction, the mountain will not move. Your words are the bridge between belief and manifestation. Imagine someone carrying seeds in their hand, but never planting them in the soil. Those seeds, no matter how powerful, will never produce fruit until they are placed in the ground. The same is true with faith. It must be planted in the atmosphere through your words. And once spoken, those words create an environment where the impossible begins to bow. The mountain may not move instantly, but each declaration chips away at its power until it has no choice but to fall. The key is consistency, never letting doubt silence your voice, but speaking truth again and again until breakthrough comes. There is a story of a young woman who faced a mountain of sickness in her life. Doctors had given her little hope, saying her condition was beyond medical help. Instead of surrendering to despair, she clung to faith. Every morning, despite her pain, she spoke life over her body. She declared, "By his stripes I am healed." She repeated it when her strength was weak, when her body trembled, and when tears filled her eyes. Friends told her to accept reality, but she knew her words were weapons. Day by day, her faith grew stronger than the mountain of sickness. Weeks later, the same doctors who had spoken hopelessness were astonished. Her body had begun to recover in ways science could not explain. Her story became a testimony of what happens when faith speaks to the mountain. She didn't ignore her reality. She confronted it with the higher reality of God's promise. Her words, birthed in faith, turned the impossible into a living miracle. The mountains in our lives are often intimidating because they appear unshakable. Their size and strength make us feel small, but that's when faith reminds us it is not about who we are, but about who God is. When faith speaks, it borrows authority from the one who created heaven and earth. That is why you must not measure the mountain against yourself. Measure it against the power of your God. Mountains may tower high, but they cannot resist the voice of faith backed by divine authority. Every word you speak in faith is like a hammer hitting a wall. Each strike may not seem like much, but eventually the wall begins to crack and crumble. Faith requires perseverance, not because God is slow to respond, but because the mountain must learn that it cannot outlast your belief. Fear thrives on silence, but faith destroys fear through declaration. Every time you speak in alignment with God's promises, you reinforce your victory and weaken the grip of the mountain over your life. Speaking to the mountain is not about ignoring reality, but about declaring a greater reality. The mountain says you can't, but faith says with God, I can. The mountain says it's over, but faith says this is just the beginning. The mountain says you are weak, but faith says his strength is made perfect in my weakness. Your words must align with faith, not fear, because your tongue carries the power of life and death. Each time you declare with authority, you are choosing life over defeat, victory over despair, and hope over hopelessness. This is why you must not only think faith, but also speak it, release it, and live it. The mountain may rise, but your voice can bring it down. When you dare to speak faith consistently, you shift atmospheres, silence the voice of the enemy, and release heaven's power into your situation. The miracle is already written in God's promise. Your faithful words bring it to life. Faith is not proven in the easy moments of life. It shines most brightly when the storms rage, when the winds blow, and when everything around you seems to collapse. Many people can believe when the sun is shining and the path is clear, but true faith is tested in the midnight hour, when answers seem delayed and the future looks uncertain. It is in those dark valleys that faith refuses to bow, refuses to quit, and refuses to let go. Standing in faith does not mean you are not shaken by what you see. It means that even when the world around you trembles, you remain rooted in what you know to be true. Standing faith says, though I walk through the valley, I will not fear. When others give up, when others say it's impossible, when others walk away, faith plants its feet firmly and declares, my God will not fail. That unshakable posture is not born from human strength, but from trust in the one who holds all things together. Faith does not collapse when others fall. It becomes the anchor that keeps you steady until the storm passes. Faith is like a tree planted by rivers of living water. It may bend in the storm, but it does not break because its roots go deep. Those who have shallow faith, faith only rooted in emotions or circumstances, may topple when the winds blow, but the one who is deeply rooted in the promises of God stands tall, even when others are swept away. Standing faith is not about ignoring reality. It is about refusing to let reality dictate the outcome. The waves may crash, the lightning may strike, and the darkness may cover the sky, but faith knows that dawn is coming. That is why those who stand in faith appear different from those who fall in despair. Their words, their posture, their decisions, they all reveal a confidence that does not depend on what they see, but on what they believe. When others fall into fear, faith stands in hope. When others give in to doubt, faith clings to the unseen promise. This kind of standing faith is what carries you through the hardest battles of life. There is a story of a man who lost everything in a sudden economic collapse. Overnight, his business crumbled, his savings vanished, and the future looked bleak. Many around him who faced the same storm were crushed by despair, drowning in fear of the unknown. But this man chose a different path. Instead of falling into hopelessness, he stood on faith. Every morning he declared, I may have lost much, but I have not lost my God, and he is my source. His friends thought he was in denial, but his faith was not denial, it was determination. Days turned into weeks, and though the road was long, doors of opportunity began to open. Slowly, what had been lost began to be restored, and even greater blessings came into his life. His testimony was not about avoiding storms, but about standing when the storm tried to knock him down. His story inspired many others to hold on and keep believing. It became a living picture of what happens when faith stands tall while others fall. Faith positions you for restoration and victory, even when defeat seems certain. When faith stands, it creates a ripple effect that strengthens others. Often the reason people fall is not only because of the storm they face, but because they see others around them collapsing. But when even one person stands firmly in faith, it becomes a light in the darkness, a sign that hope is still alive. Your faith may not only sustain you, it may be the reason someone else finds the strength to rise again. Standing in faith is contagious. It inspires courage, stirs hope, and reminds people that the story is not finished yet. That is why it is so important not to let go. Even when you feel tired and weak, you never know who is watching you, who is drawing strength from your persistence. When others see you standing against impossible odds, they realize they too can endure. Faith that stands is not only a personal victory, but a collective testimony that strengthens communities, families, and even generations to come. The difference between falling and standing often comes down to where your eyes are fixed. Those who fall often keep their gaze on the storm, on the size of the problem, on the noise of the opposition. But those who stand fix their eyes on the promise, on the faithfulness of God, on the unseen hope that is greater than the visible trial. Standing faith is not blind, it is focused. It refuses to be distracted by temporary chaos because it knows the outcome is already written. To stand in faith is to declare that no matter what falls around you, you will not collapse because your foundation is unshakable. Others may bow to fear, surrender to defeat, or collapse under pressure, but faith stands tall, rooted in eternal truth. It is the still, steady strength that holds on when giving up would be easier. And when the dust settles, when the storm finally passes, those who stood in faith remain standing, victorious, and unbroken. Faith is not bound by human logic or limited by earthly possibilities. What seems unreachable to the natural mind is within reach for the one who believes. Faith is the hand that reaches into the unseen and pulls down what appears unattainable. Many people stop at the edge of impossibility, convinced that their situation is beyond hope, but faith refuses to stop there. It dares to press forward where reason gives up, declaring that nothing is too hard for God. When doors are locked, faith looks for the key in divine promises. When the road ends, faith builds a bridge of expectation. Receiving the impossible requires a boldness that silences doubt and holds on to hope even when the evidence suggests otherwise. Faith does not beg, it takes hold. It understands that impossibility is not a barrier, but an opportunity for God to reveal His glory. While fear sees a dead end, faith sees a new beginning. It is through faith that miracles become tangible, that prayers become reality, and that dreams once thought impossible suddenly stand before your eyes. The beauty of faith is that it doesn't require you to figure out the how. It only requires you to believe in the who. The impossible looks overwhelming when you try to reason it out, but faith is not limited to reasoning. It trusts the one who works beyond logic. Faith receives not because it is strong in itself, but because it is anchored in the limitless strength of God. To receive the impossible, you must silence the voices that say, "It can't be done," and instead echo the voice of promise that says, "It is already done." This is not wishful thinking. It is confidence built on the foundation of divine truth. The impossible becomes possible, not by your effort, but by aligning your heart and words with what God has already spoken. Faith receives because it knows the giver is faithful. And once that truth takes root in your spirit, impossibility loses its grip and breakthrough begins to manifest. There is a story of a couple who longed for a child for many years. Doctors told them it was impossible, that their bodies were incapable of conceiving. Their hearts were crushed, but they chose to cling to faith instead of despair. Every day they prayed and declared life over their future. Even when friends told them to accept their reality, they held on to the promise that nothing is impossible for God. Years passed, and the waiting was painful, but their faith did not let go. Then, against all odds, the miracle happened. The wife conceived, and a beautiful child was born. The joy of holding that baby was more than just the fulfillment of a dream. It was proof that faith receives what man says is impossible. Their story became a testimony of perseverance and trust, inspiring countless others who face similar mountains. It showed that while human voices may declare finality, faith listens to the higher voice that speaks life into the impossible. Faith receives the impossible because it operates from a higher reality. What you see with your eyes may scream defeat, but faith sees beyond the visible into the unseen realm where every promise is already secured. The key is to live not by sight, but by belief. refusing to be swayed by temporary circumstances. The moment you decide to believe in the face of impossibility, you align yourself with supernatural outcome. Faith doesn't deny the facts, but it denies the facts, the power to dictate your destiny. The same God who parted seas, who raised the dead, and who multiplied bread and fish is the same God who works today. That is why faith can stand with confidence and say, if he did it before, he will do it again. Receiving the impossible is not about achieving something extraordinary by human power. It is about positioning yourself to experience the extraordinary through divine power. Faith is the channel through which the impossible flows into your life. Without it, impossibility remains impossibility, but with it, impossibility transforms into testimony. To receive, you must not only believe, but also persist, even when nothing seems to change. Faith keeps knocking on the door until it opens, keeps sowing seeds until the harvest comes, keeps declaring until the mountain moves. Many give up too soon, standing inches away from their miracle, but those who hold on in faith receive what others only dreamed of. Faith does not faint at delay. It strengthens itself in hope. That is why the impossible is not reserved for a select few. It is available to anyone who dares to believe. The question is not whether the impossible can happen. The question is whether you will stand in faith long enough to receive it. For those who do, the impossible ceases to be a dream and becomes a living reality. Faith is the anchor that holds us steady in the storm, the voice that commands the mountain to move, and the hand that reaches into the unseen to receive the impossible. It does not bow to fear, it does not collapse under pressure, and it does not give up when hope seems lost. Faith declares with boldness that the God who promised is faithful to perform. It speaks with authority, it stands with courage, and it receives with expectancy. Every story of triumph, every testimony of breakthrough, and every miracle accomplished begins with a heart that dared to believe. You may be facing challenges that look too big, mountains that seem immovable, or dreams that feel unreachable. But remember, faith is the bridge between where you are and where you are called to be. Keep speaking, keep standing, and keep believing, for your faith is working even when you cannot see it. And in due season, you will hold in your hands what once felt impossible in your heart. Thank you for listening. May your faith rise stronger than ever, and may every mountain before you move. In the mighty name of the Lord, God bless you.